Hi everyone. Today we are going to see circulation from the subject animal physiology. Now we see what is circulation. Circulation is the continuous movement of blood throughout the body which is driven by the pumping actions of the heart. This is circulation. Now we see the structure of the heart. The human heart is divided into 4 chambers. There are 2 ventricles and 2 auricles. The ventricles pumps blood and the auricle receives the blood. Among these ventricle and auricles, both the right auricles and the ventricles make up the right side of the heart, and the left auricle and the ventricle make up the left side of the heart. So, right and left regions of the heart are separated by the walls of the muscles, which is called septum. The right ventricle pumps the blood to the lungs for reoxygenation through the pulmonary arteries. The right semilunar valves close and prevent the blood from flowing back into the heart. The oxygenated blood is received by the left auricles from the lungs through pulmonary veins. Now we see the external structures of the heart. What is pericardium? The human heart is situated to the left side of the chest and is enclosed within the fluid-filled cavity, that is the pericardial cavity. So the walls and the lining of the pericardial cavities are made up of the membrane, which is known as the pericardium. So pericardium is a fiber membrane found as an external covering around the heart. It protects the heart by producing a serous fluid which serves to lubricate the heart and prevent friction between the surroundings. Apart from the lubrication, the pericardium also helps by holding the heart in its position and by maintaining the hollow space for the heart to expand itself when it is full. The pericardium has 2 layers. The first one is visceral layer. It directly covers the outsides of the heart. Parietal layer, it forms a sac around the outer regions of the heart that contains the fluid in the pericardial cavity. Now we see the heart wall. The heart wall is made up of 3 layers. The first one is epicardium. Epicardium is the outermost layer of the heart. It is composed of a thin layer membrane that serves to lubricate and protect the outer section. Myocardium is a layer of the muscle tissues and is constitute the middle layer wall. It contributes to the thickness and it's responsible for the pumping action. The third one is endocardium. The innermost layer it linings the inner heart chamber and covers the heart valves. Further, it prevents the blood from sticking to the inner wall and preventing potentially fatal blood clots. Now we see the internal structures of the heart. The internal structures of the heart is involved with several chambers and valves that controls the flow of blood. Now we see the chambers of the heart. Vertebrate heart classified based on the number of chambers. For instance, most fish have 2 chambers and reptiles and amphibians have 3 chambers. Avians and the mammalian heart consist of 4 chambers. Human hearts are, the mammals have 4 chambers, that is left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle. Now we see the atria are thin and have less muscular walls and are smaller than the ventricle. These are the blood receiving chambers that are fed by the large veins. Now we see the ventricles are larger and more muscular chamber which is responsible for pumping and pushing blood out into the circulation. These are connected to large arteries that deliver blood for circulation. The right ventricles and right atrium are comparatively smaller than the left chambers. The walls consist of fewer muscles which is composed to the left portions, and the size difference is based on the function. The blood originating from the right side flows through the pulmonary circulation, while blood arising from the left chamber is pumped throughout the body. Now we see the blood vessels. The organisms with closed circulatory system, the blood flows within the vessels of varying size. All vertebrates, including humans, possess the closed type of circulation. The external structures of the heart have many blood vessels that forms a network with other major vessels which is emerging from within the structures. The blood vessels typically comprise veins, capillaries, arteries. Now you see the veins, it supplies deoxygenated blood to the heart through inferior and superior vena cava and it drains into the right atrium. The capillaries are tiny tube-like vessels which forms a network between the arteries to the veins. Arteries are muscular wall tubes mainly involved in supplying oxygenated blood away from the heart to all other parts of the body. Aorta is the largest of the arteries and it branches off into various smaller arteries throughout the body. Now we'll see the valves. Valves are flaps of fibrous tissues located in the cardiac chambers between the veins. They ensure that the blood flows in a single direction, that is unidirectional. Flaps also prevent the flow from flowing backwards based on the function. Valves are two types. Atrioventricular valves, which is between the ventricles and atria. The valves between the right ventricles and the right atrium is the tricuspid valve, and that one which is found between the left ventricles and the left atrium is known as the mitral valve. Now see the semilunar valves are located between the left ventricles and the aorta. It's also found between the pulmonary arteries and the right ventricle. Now we'll see the working mechanism of mammalian heart. So mammalian heart is a muscular organ which is responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. It's a double pump system which ensuring that a deoxygenated blood is sent to the lungs for oxygenation and the oxygenated blood is distributed to the rest of the body. So it's detailed breakdown of the heart structure and working mechanism now we see. Now we see the anatomy of the human heart is the heart's location now we see. Heart is located in the thoracic cavity between the lungs slightly to the left of the midline. The chambers are, the heart has the four chambers already I mentioned it. Now we see the right atrium receives the deoxygenated blood from the body to the superior and inferior vena cava. The right ventricles, it pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs via the pulmonary arteries. Left atrium, which receives oxygenated blood from the lungs to the pulmonary veins. Left ventricle, which pumps oxygenated blood to the body via the aorta. That valves ensures one-way flow of blood and prevents the backflow. Atrioventricular valve, it is a tricuspid valve and bicuspid valve. The tricuspid valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle is located. The bicuspid, that is another, it's called mitral valve between the left atrium and the left ventricle. Now you see the semilunar valve. The pulmonary veins between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is located. The aortic valve located between the left ventricle and aorta. Septum is the muscular valve that separates the right and left sides of the heart to prevent mixing of the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood. Myocardium is a thick muscular layer of the heart. It's responsible for contractions. Pericardium is a double-walled sac that encloses the heart, providing protections and reducing friction during the heartbeat. Now we will see the cardiac cycle is a sequence of events that occurs from one heartbeat to the next. It consists of two main phases: systole, that is contraction, and the diastole is a relaxation. Now we see the systole, that is a relaxation phase. Atrial, diastole, both atrial relax, allowing them to fill blood. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from the body, and the left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. Ventricular diastole, the ventricles are relaxed and filled with blood from the atria. The atrioventricular valves, that is tricuspid and bicuspid valves, are opened, while the semilunar valve, that is pulmonary and aortic, are closed. The systole, it is a contraction phase. Here now see the atrial systole. The atria contract, pushing blood into the ventricles. This phase is brief and completes the filling of the ventricles. Ventricular systole, the ventricles contracting, forcing blood out of the heart. The right ventricle pump deoxygenated blood into the pulmonary artery to the lungs, and the left ventricle is pumping oxygenated blood into the aorta, that is the rest of the body. The atrioventricular valve is closed to prevent backflow into the atria, and the semilunar valve opens to allow blood to exit the heart. Now we will see the electrical conduction system. The heart has an intrinsic electrical conduction system that coordinates the heartbeat. Sinoatrial node, which is located in the right atrium. The sinoatrial node is the natural pacemaker of the heart. It generates the electrical impulses that cause the atria to contract, that is atrial systole. Atrioventricular node is located at the junctions between the atria and the ventricles. The atrioventricular node receives the impulse from the sinoauricular node, and it delays it slightly, allowing the ventricles to fill completely before they contract. Bundle of His is a path that transmits impulses from the arioventricular node to the ventricles. And the Purkinje fibers, it spread throughout the ventricles, ensuring the rapid and coordinated contractions of the ventricular myocardium. Now see the blood circulation. The heart supports two major circulatory lobes. The first one is pulmonary circulation. The right side of the heart pumps oxygenated blood to the lungs via the pulmonary artery. In the lungs, blood picks up oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. The oxygenated blood returning to the left atrium via pulmonary veins. Now we see the systemic circulation. The left side of the heart pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of the body through aorta. Oxygen and nutrients are delivered to the tissues, and carbon dioxide and waste products are picked up. Deoxygenated blood returns to the right atrium via the superior and inferior vena cava. Now we see the regulations of heart rate through the autonomous nervous system. The heart rate is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate during stress or physical activity, while the parasympathetic nervous system decreases heart rate during rest. Hormonal control. Hormones like adrenaline, that is epinephrine, increases the heart rate and forces of the contractions during the fight or flight responses. Baroreceptor. These pressure sensitive receptors in the aorta and carotid arteries monitor the blood pressures and send signals to the brain to adjust heart rate accordingly. The cardiac output is the volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Coronary circulation. The heart muscles itself receives oxygen and nutrients throughout coronary circulation. The coronary arteries branches off from the aorta and supply blood to the myocardium. After delivering oxygen, the deoxygenated blood is collected by coronary veins, which empty into the right atrium. The heartbeat and the cardiac cycle. Together you see the cardiac cycle attributes to the comprehensive heartbeat from its production to the commencement of the next beat. The heartbeat comprises diastole, the systole, and the intervening phases. The occurrence of a cardiac cycle is by the heart rate, which is naturally indicated as beats per minute. A healthy human heart beats 72 times per minute. It states that there are 72 cardiac cycles per minute. The cardiac cycles involve a complete contractions and relaxations of both the atria and the ventricles, and the cycle lasts approximately 0.8 seconds. Now we see the physiology of the cardiac cycle. The human heart consists of 4 chambers comprising left and right valve, 2 upper chambers including the left and right atrium, 2 lower chambers include right and left ventricles. The key functions of the right ventricle to pump deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary arteries and the pulmonary trunk to the lungs, while the left ventricle is responsible for pumping newly oxygenated blood to the body through the aorta. Now we see the phases of the cardiac cycle. Different phases occurs in a cardiac cycle. The first one is atrial diastole. In this stage, chambers of the heart are calm. That is, when the aortic valves and pulmonary arteries closes and atrioventricular valve opens, thus causing chambers of the heart to relax. Atrial systole. This phase, blood cells flows from the atrium to ventricles and the spirit atrium contracts. Isovolumic contraction. In this stage, ventricles begin to contract, the atrioventricular valve and the pulmonary artery valve is closed. But there won't be any transformation in volume. Ventricular ejections. Ventricles contract and emptying, pulmonary artery and aortic valve closed. Isovolumic relaxation. In this phase, no blood enters the ventricles and consequently pressures decreases, ventricles stop contracting and begin to relax. Now, due to the pressures in the aorta, pulmonary artery and aortic valve closes. Ventricular filling stage. In this stage, blood flows from atria into the ventricles. It is altogether known as one stage, first and second stage. After that, there are 3 phases that involve the flow of blood to the pulmonary artery from ventricles. Now we will see the durations of the cardiac cycle. In a normal person, a heartbeat is 72 beats per minute, so that the duration of one cardiac cycle can be calculated as 1 divided by 72 beats per minute, that is 0.0139 minutes per beat. At this heart rate 72 beats per minute, durations of each cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. Different stages of the cardiac cycles are atrial systole. It continues for about 0.1 seconds. Ventricular systole continues for about 0.3 seconds. Atrial diastole continues for about 0.7 seconds. Ventricular diastole continues for about 0.5 seconds. If it is any variations existing in these seconds only, it will cause due to some factors and cause problems to the heart. Thank you.